Testing. Blah, 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 blah.
Ready, set, go.
It's time for the Coach Amy and Coach Liz show.
A podcast for endurance athletes by 2 athletes, 2 coaches, and a physical therapist.
We are your hosts, Coach Amy
And Coach Liz.
coming to you from Kansas City. Okay, you guys, we have gotten some comments on and some feedback on our podcast, and we love that. We love those written comments. That really helps us to plan our future episodes and to hear what you guys are thinking and to respond to questions. So
And to know you're out there.
And to know you're out there in
The void.
Because we can't see you. All right, so Liz, we're going to talk about sort of the IV drip, the IV spas, that banana bag before a race. But before we get started on that, what do you have coming up this weekend, Liz?
You know, I'm just going to really kind of get all my ducks in a row for our Boulder Training Camp that we have coming up in a couple weeks. So I'm just going to spend the weekend getting everything lined up and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because that's a lot of stuff to plan. What are the plans? How many days does the camp last?
People usually arrive Thursday evening, and then we do Thursday night, and then Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday morning, and then people generally, because they need to get back. So it's about 3 days, Thursday night to Sunday. You know.
And do they run, bike, swim every day, or do you kind of do a little bit of this and a little bit of that?
No, we do a mix of it. So Thursday night, there's the option to either gravel ride, or there's Boulder has a race out at their reservoir that's like a swim run option that's just kind of light and fun. They do a weekly series. So those 2 options on Thursday night if you get there early and want to do that. And then Friday we ride up to Ward, which is a mountain town, and so it's basically you ride straight up a mountain, which is just good experience. It's good for the legs, and it's for all levels, so not everybody goes all the way up. We kind of monitor and make sure that people have appropriate goals, and then we do actually a pool swim on Friday so that I can just look at people's technique and that kind of stuff. And then Saturday we do a longer ride, so we've got a longer route that's people can ride as long as they want. They can go up to about 70 miles and then do a run off the bike. And then Saturday night we have a little just kind of light roll session where we can kind of take some downtime, or they can do a hike if they're still feeling ambitious. And we have dinner, and then Sunday we're gonna go out and run on some trails, and then they can head home.
How fun. Okay, and those trails are rocky, or are they okay?
I keep them pretty so
it's not trail, it's paved, or
it is the place
smooth.
That we're going. So actually on that Sunday morning we'll have an option for, you can either run or you can do gravel biking if you're wanting to do that. And so the place that I have picked out, one is it's a 2 to 3 mile loop that's on wide crushed gravel, very open. It's not technical at all. And then from that same location you could run a more technical, but it's a single track meant for gravel biking that you could do. You could also run on that if you wanted to. I went out and ran on both of them earlier this year to kind of scout them out, but we don't normally run on trails, so I don't want to throw them out onto a technical trail.
Right. I just so badly want to go to this, but I can't do the altitude.
I know.
But I'm picturing myself with one of those wheelie oxygen tanks.
Oh my God.
Riding my bike with this little trailer with my oxygen and my oxygen mask, and I so badly want to do it. I would even do something if there was some way to do it that.
Oh my God. Oh God. No, that. But it's a real thing, and I think that people underestimate. When we come from Kansas City, we used to go out and do Boulder 70.3 as our team half Ironman, and I've taken that off our list because it is so hard, and the course itself isn't even that hard. But I think for people who don't live out there, between how dry it is, and then the fact that run course has almost no shade, that run, it was a bloodbath out there. And it wasn't just our team. I saw people, it's just a really hard course, and it sneaks up on people and they don't realize it. And I just I can't take our team out there anymore because it's just, it's brutal.
You have the altitude problem, and it's, it's not like professional athletes where you're going out for 2 weeks ahead of time to acclimate. And then also you have that, the dehydration is just very hard to keep up on the hydration. And again, you haven't been there to acclimate and get used to it.
Well, and I think the thing that's super tricky about it is that bike course actually isn't that hard. And so people don't realize, because, you go out to altitude and you think that you're going to feel I feel altitude pretty severely, so it doesn't take much for me to know that I'm in altitude, but that's not the case for everybody. So people will get out there and they don't necessarily feel the altitude on the bike like they think they will, and so they think they're okay. But what they don't realize is that the altitude is affecting them, and it is making their heart rate generally like, it may only be 5 to 15 beats higher, but you do that over the course of a 7-hour day, and like you have a bike that you don't think is that hard, so you're not really paying attention, and then you've been, your heart rate's slightly higher for 4 hours, and you're dehydrated, and then you get out on a really hot run course, and like it just is
crumble.
It crumbles.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Speaking of hydration, our topic is about this. So I had a patient that is saying, and she's training for a full marathon that's coming up, and she was talking about how she does, how her plan is to have this, IV drip session is kind of one of those IV spas the day before the race. She's got it planned up where she's going to get this, I call it a banana bag, is what it's called in the medical field. And usually there's electrolytes in that one. The IV drip though, this is just, she said, I'm just going to get ahead of the hydration. And I was like, wait, what?
And you're talking about the day before
a race. The day before a race. Yep. And it's this thing now. And, I haven't been to a marathon race expo in forever. And apparently they're set up at the expos now. And I was like, okay. And she's like, wait, I sense that you are, not liking this. What are you thinking? And it's a big, huge no.
Well, and let me pop in real quick.
Yeah.
Because I actually was way more familiar with people using these after a race. Like they're at the ends of like when we did Pikes Peak last year there at triathlons, and I was much more aware of those being used after a race for like rehydrating, and I did not actually know that they were as big before a race, but they are, and so I think this is interesting.
It in the medical tent, if you're dehydrated, having medical professionals give it to you, then yes, 100%.
But that's where I thought the idea, like at least in triathlon, that was kind of where I thought it came from, is that people were like, oh, you can get this drip in the medical tent after a race. And so then they started you could get them at the end of the race, not in the medical tent, for purchase after a race. But this is really interesting.
Here's my problem with that. Unless you were medically evaluated.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not advocating for
that. But that's my question is,
I just didn't know that they were used before races too.
But let's talk about the after for a second, because some people what if you have the opposite? You have hyponatremia and your symptoms, and you feel like you think it's dehydration.
100%.
Who's to that you can't diagnose that for yourself, number one. And number two, neither can someone who's just selling something.
Well, and so that's a really important point, because I get that question a lot. Like people, how do you know if it's too much water or too much electrolytes? Like where's the imbalance? And you don't always know, and that's why you go to the medical tent.
The medical tent. Yes, those are medical professionals. Those are doctors and nurses.
Because those are very different things, and the implications are very different. And you're risking. I mean, you could die.
And you're also not sitting there and paying for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my big no. Here's why. Let me support my argument.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay, I've got 4 basic reasons. Not basic reasons, important reasons.
Why not to do it before a race?
Why not to do it before a race? Number 1, it's a waste of your money. And here's why. Because you're going to pee it all out. You're just going to pee it all out. There is not a benefit if it's taken more than an hour before your race. Okay, so you're just peeing it all out. And hang on and stick with us, and you'll find out how you can hydrate for the day before to make it work for you. Number 2, there is a risk of hyponatremia, and that's where you have low sodium levels because you're getting too much fluids. Now the reason that
too much water,
too much water and not enough sodium, so you're going to be out of balance, and that's a dangerous situation. That's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And the reason that is because when you get an IV, your thirst mechanism is not altered. So you might think that you're still thirsty. You might feel thirsty still when you're during the race and take in too much water. It's also these IV solutions that they're selling are not regulated. So you might be getting, too much fluid, again, too much water for the balance of electrolytes. All right, reason number 3, it's banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So it's not going to be happening with professional athletes,
That's interesting.
Number 3. Number 4, getting back to that, it's not regulated. Some of these bags contain pain relievers, which is a big no. And we'll do a whole separate podcast on taking pain relievers, if you should, what kind, before a race. Okay, so those are the top 4 reasons as to why not to. You're frowning. What are you looking at?
I'm not frowning.
My notes.
I'm just thinking so typically I just assumed that there was some balance of electrolytes and water in these drips. So there's also sometimes can be the pain medicine. Are there other things that are in the IVs? Like, are people getting other things, or is it generally you're getting the IV because of the electrolytes and the water? Is what people think they...
Right. And it's not regulated. So what is in there?
Right.
And what is your balance, what you need?
Yeah.
Okay, so then one of the questions I asked my patient was, did it work for you? And she said, yes, it's worked for me in the past. And she goes, but why did it work for me then if I'm peeing it all out and it's wasting my money? And
it's a good question.
It's a really good question. One is that it could be a placebo. It's very powerful for your mind. And 2, it could be that you're so badly dehydrated, just running on a normal, badly dehydrated state all the time, that it boosted your hydration and it let you sleep a little bit better the night before. It didn't carry over into the next day. It's just that, and if you're running around dehydrated all the time, like just on a normal level, you have a bigger problem. But that might have been why, she felt a little bit, better, that it had an effect. Okay. So what should we do instead to be hydrated for the race that costs very little money? And we've talked about this. It's kind of that like hyperhydration, but that doesn't mean drinking too much water. Okay. But that's the term it's used in the industry. And we talk about this in a podcast episode that we did. I think it was almost like our first episid ever that we recorded about hydration.
Athletes, one where we talk about this is preloading.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, it is like that. So the day before your race, you are sipping on, it could be an electrolyte drink, and it could be any of these sport drinks, but we've talked about which ones we like Noon or Scratch or Liquid IV. Obviously, you don't want to have a ton of added sugar to it or anything like that. But you're sipping on it throughout the day. And there's a term that you and I both use, and I learned it from you. And it could trip people up when they're listening to some previous podcasts. As we call it the IV method. So it's like a trickle of getting in your fuel and your carbohydrates and your fluids throughout your race. And even, the day before, but it doesn't mean that you've got an IV bag, right? That you sat there and, you just had it, in one sitting.
No.
What we mean by that is like when you're hospitalized and you've got this IV drip going into your arm, like all the whole time that you're there, it's for hours and hours and hours throughout the day. You're getting this fluids and whatever medications that you need if you're in the hospital. So that's where we came, you came up with that term, which I love. I just don't want it to be confused with this.
No, what we mean is that you're taking it via mouth, like via water bottle. It's your water bottle, and you're just trickling it in all day as if you had an IV.
And in the race, the same thing. You're trickling in your fuel. You're not just throwing that big goo packet into your mouth and swallowing it all at once and taking in 8 ounces of fluid and moving on. You're taking it in gradually, and that is the most effective way. So to take out that confusion with the whole IV thing. So, to recap.
Well, and the other thing that I think is really important is that when you're preloading, and depending on how long the race is, where it is, how hot it is. I mean, we may start being conscious of preloading like the whole week or at least a couple days beforehand. But I do think it's really important because you are taking in things that your body's used to. So you're not putting, we say nothing new before a race. And so, when you're prehydrating, you're using things that you've
used before. And you've practiced it because that's what you should be doing before your long training runs anyway. Exactly. Your long training runs, especially in the heat, you're doing more. There is a thing where you don't want to do that 24-hour before your long training runs, before your really hot runs, before your race. You don't want to do that all the time because what happens is your kidneys and your body starts to adapt. So then it's different. So You wouldn't you would be really tired of taking in sips of noon all day long every day anyway, so I don't think that's a risk of a problem. But okay, so to recap, Coach Amy says no IV bag before a race. And after. Maybe after if it's in a medical tent because the medical professionals deem that you need that.
Yes.
All right.
Yay. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, we are in this together.
Until next time.